Speaking of failures, Biden, of course, signing the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill into law today. And this is all fueled by what? Our money, taxpayer dollars. Although he claims it's already paid for, not going to cost us a penny. Remember that? Biden seen touting how the bill is bipartisan, because remember, there was 13 House Republicans who helped to advance the bill earlier this month, even though 9 Democrats said no. So I'm just going to point that out again. I wish we had the 13 names and faces. If those Republicans would have held strong, it wouldn't have gone through. Biden's $1.7 trillion Build Back Better plan still hangs in the balance. Let's hope that some of those weak-kneed Republicans don't give in again. I know one guy that won't, and that's Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. He joins me now to talk all things infrastructure, spending, and also this new poll and the January 6th witch hunt. Matt, nice to see you again. How you been?
I'm great, Dan. And, let's start with the Bannon matter. I stand with Steve Bannon, and this really requires us to use our pattern recognition skills, because the Biden regime is now targeting any entity that they fear might dislodge them from power, and they're using criminal process to do it. They started with the Loudoun County, Virginia parents wanting us all to believe that somehow they were domestic terrorists because they opposed critical race theory and other elements of poison being put into the minds of their children. They tried it also with, Steve Bannon now. They tried it with Project Veritas, sending the FBI to actually raid journalists who were exposing corruption in media, in technology, and then made a lot of very powerful people uncomfortable. And so with Bannon, you have really the intellectual architect of the America First movement. If Donald Trump is the leader of the America First movement, Steve Bannon is the keeper of the flame. They know he's a threat to them. That's why he's been specifically targeted. This January 6th committee, if you can even call it that, is like a runaway train. It's extra constitutional. It is not like a committee comprised of the Republicans selected by the Republicans and the Democrats selected by the Democrats. Right. It is a total show trial, and the whole reason you totally nailed in your monologue. This so-called non-infrastructure bill has provided no bump to Joe Biden. It hasn't improved his numbers at all, and so they need something to try to coalesce the political left. That's no policy portfolio. That's no benefit to the American economy. And so it will be the persecution of their enemies like parents and Project Veritas and Bannon.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Bannon. I want to hit Project Veritas quick. I was off last week helping out a charity back east when all this broke, and a federal judge actually jumped in. So I wanted your thoughts on that. I don't know if folks know at home, but a judge jumped in and said, hey, FBI, DOJ, stop tracking his phones, stop doing this, stop going after him, do it the legal, proper way. Because I don't know how in the hell they got permission to spy on him, to do what they were doing to Tucker, to go after phone messages and emails and text messages. I mean, he's one of the last journalists left out there. People may not approve of his tactics, but let me tell you what, it's getting results, and we're finding out who are the scumbags out there, whether it's big pharma to political adversaries, you name it. He's got the you-know-whats to go out there and do it, and I'm glad that judge stood up. Your thoughts on that one?
I am going to put Project Veritas in my will after they got the CNN directors admitting that they were lying and propagandizing my life because I'm effective at stopping the Democratic Party. But in this particular case, it was actually the collusion between the New York Times and the FBI that a judge wanted to review before allowing that criminal process to be used further against journalists. You may remember in the opening days of the Biden administration, CNN's Caitlin Collins asked Joe Biden a question about whether or not there would be the targeting of journalists during his presidency. And Biden said, oh, no, that was a vestige of the Trump presidency. We would never do that. And now you see they're doing exactly what Biden said they would not do. And it is very damaging to our democracy. But we can't evaluate the Project Veritas matter, the school board parent matter, and the Bannon matter independently. It's all part of exactly the same pattern, and that's what we have to be willing to fight against. Now, the polling that you referenced in your monologue suggests that Republicans are actually poised to get power, to be able to conduct oversight. And the question is, will we have the courage to use it? Will we be willing to shut this government down if necessary to end these mandates that are destroying our economy? Will we actually fight for our workers and not the lobbyists on K Street so that we're able to get a supply chain crises solved in the United States of America. So I'm fighting for the soul of the Republican Party, because when we win, I want to be in a position to deliver for the American people, not revert back to the neoconservative mean with Paul Ryan and Mitch
That's
McConnell.
right. And people don't want to hear that, Matt. I'm so glad you brought that up. And I was just about to go to that poll, because that poll that I think it was ABC conducted actually said, what is it? For the first time in 40 years, Republicans are polling at their highest to take back control in the midterms. But I can tell you, Matt, and you hit the nail on the head, America First type folks like myself and millions of other Americans don't want to see the GOP go back to the days of old. So if in fact we do, and I hope to God we take back control of the House and Senate so we can make him a true lame duck president the last 2 years and stop any more nonsense he tries to put through, you better get to work and roll up the sleeves and actually do what you say, because if it's more lip service, Americans not going to take that from the GOP and the RNC folks. I don't care if they're conservatives. So I know you won't, but there's others. We saw 13 who sided with the infrastructure bill, and as I said in the intro to you, there were 9 Democrats that went against it. If those 13 would have held strong, we wouldn't be sitting here having this discussion right now.
He would already be a lame duck president if Republicans would have been as cohesive as Democrats are. And I think we've got to really have a tough look at our conference and those we choose to be leaders on committees when looking at which 13 crossed the line. But I mean, you're right. Joe Biden right now is less popular than the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And yet we've got to be in a position to capitalize on that, not only electorally, but from a policy standpoint. And remember, it's Steve Bannon who really led the intellectual realignment of the conservative right, where we stand up for our workers, where we're not trying to invade everywhere and invite everyone across our borders illegally, because that's what big business wants. So that populist energy on the political right that is working and achieving and ascendant in our nation today, that's what they fear. That's why Bannon's been targeted. And many of these other people on the subpoena list you identified, they probably would be major players in a second Trump presidency. And so the Biden regime is trying to kneecap people today so that they don't have to be subject to the will of the people when we take power again.
Yeah, they're great at playing political warfare and using the media to do that. And whether or not they have evidence or anything is actually meaningful, it's as long as we can get it out there in the mainstream media and it's covered for a few days, it'll poison a good portion of Americans. And that's all we need to do. So whether or not any of these folks that have been subpoenaed or have indictments, like a Bannon, like a Kayleigh McEnany, what did she do wrong? Nothing. It doesn't matter. Like you just said, they're trying to give them that black eye in the media so that if and when, and probably so, we see another Trump presidency, these folks come back in and are rehired. Oh, now we've got some doubt on who they are because credibility issues, because we use the media. Let's end on a positive note, Matt, because I got to give some kudos to your man, Mr. DeSantis down there, the probably best governor. Sorry if I upset some future guests or past guests in America right now, but he's on the top of the dang list. I saw an article that says Florida has already hired at least a dozen, if not dozens, of New York cops who either got pushed out or resigned because of the vax mandate. So kudos to you and Mr. DeSantis and Floridians for embracing and taking in those first responders and cops down in your home state, Matt.
We love law enforcement. We're thankful to those who put themselves forward to serve in our communities, to protect our neighborhoods. And absolutely, what matters most to us is that sense of service, not surrendering freedom and liberty to a medical bureaucracy. Ron DeSantis has shown courage time and again as America's best governor, and I think he's got a very, very bright future in Florida and hopefully one day, maybe even the guy who's leading our country. I'm ready for the second Trump presidency first, but after that, DeSantis is a young man, and he'd be a pretty good occupant in the White House, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think he's my age or even younger. So, I mean, we could see him as a VP and then two terms of him after Trump. Dan.
He's my buddy, so I could tell you. Ron DeSantis looks way older than you are, so I'm going to have to fact check you on that.
Go ahead, fact check me. Mr. Firebrand himself, Matt Gaetz, representing Florida's first. Thanks so much, Matt. As always, it's a pleasure. Take care, brother.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep. The very